What's your scariest real-life story? Story 1. Saturday morning, I was driving to work on the highway. I was in the middle lane and going quite fast because I was running a bit late. I nearly panicked when I noticed a car rapidly approaching from behind in my left side mirror. It was a black Honda Civic. I wondered who was behind the wheel and took a careful look at the car. It was still dark outside, but I could see the driver looking at me as he passed. Then I noticed someone else in the back seat. It was a young woman. She seemed to be hitting the rear window. I thought maybe someone was playing a prank on me. But when I saw the driver push the woman down from where she was hitting the window and swerve the car violently, I realized something was very wrong. That woman was asking for help. I sped up a bit and got behind them to follow. I saw the driver repeatedly swing his arm toward the back seat as if he was hitting her. The woman's arms were flailing inside the car. I was witnessing a kidnapping right before my eyes. Just then, the brake lights of the car in front lit up and it started to slow down. The driver had realized I saw what was going on and that I was following him. As much as I wanted to help the woman, I didn't know if the man was armed. Still, I took the next exit but didn't fully leave the highway. I waited for the car to pass in front of me again, then cut across the grass back onto the road and sped up to catch them. I was on the phone with 911 at this point. I caught up to them again going nearly 150 kilometers per hour, but the man noticed me before I could get close. I tried to pass him, but he swerved in front of me, forcing me to stop. Then he got out of his car. He had something in his hand and started running toward my car. Panicked, I threw the car into reverse and backed up until he stopped chasing me. Then I quickly shifted back into drive and sped past him before he could return to his car. The 911 operator told me that a state trooper was ahead of us and asked me to keep going until I reached them. The man was still chasing me, and our speed was insane. This time, we were going around 180 kilometers per hour. When I saw the flashing red and blue lights in my rearview mirror, I felt like a mountain had been lifted off my chest. I was in front, the man in the middle, and the police car behind him. The man couldn't maneuver and soon had to pull over onto the grass. I stopped in front of him but left 2 car lengths between us because I still didn't know what might happen. Luckily, the officer had his equipment ready and got the man out of the car with his hands up. I got out too and watched everything unfold. The man was forced to the ground and handcuffed. Soon another police car arrived. Another officer got involved and helped get the woman out of the back seat. She had been badly hurt, was in tears but overjoyed to be rescued. She kept turning to me, thanking me for helping her. The driver turned out to be her ex-boyfriend. He had come to her house, and when she refused to talk to him, he attacked her and forced her into the car. Because the car had child locks, she couldn't get out. But if I or someone else hadn't noticed her silent cries for help through that rear window, she might not have been saved. Story 2. I've only told one person the full story. I probably sound paranoid, but I know what I saw, what I felt. I met this guy, Adrian, during a post-breakup slump. He was attractive, charming, FaceTimed early, brought flowers on the first date. He stayed over once, on the couch. Everything felt normal, until it didn't. A few days later, my bathroom trash had been emptied. My mugs were moved. A drawer I never touched was cracked open. I told myself I was overthinking until I got a Snapchat. It was me, doing dishes, from behind, taken inside my apartment. Then he messaged, "You ghosted me." Next day, he liked every Instagram photo I had, back to 2016. Then followed a high school friend I hadn't tagged in years. Then left a comment, "Might come say hi soon." I came home from work one night to a rose on my doorstep, the same kind he brought on our first date. No note, no knock, just the rose. Then one night at 3:40 a.m., my smoke alarm went off. No fire, no food. But in my coat closet, a still smoking cigarette, in a ceramic mug, on a paper napkin, waiting to catch fire. The police found no fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. But they did find a blank universal key inside my lock, unmarked, filed smooth, maintenance style, like someone had made a copy. I moved out the next month. I still check under my bed every night. I haven't opened a dating app in 2 years. Story 3. I live alone. I'm a hardworking, fairly young guy. I just bought my own house last year, and while yes, sometimes I get spooked when I hear a creak in the house, I have never had an experience like the one I faced last week. As you can imagine, in this economy, it's not the easiest to own property by yourself. Most people wait until they are married and have dual incomes to purchase a home. I, on the other hand, believed I could handle the responsibility on my own. It wasn't easy, don't get me wrong. Sometimes the bills were paid, and I had very little spending money for anything else. I was okay with that, though. I guess you could call it pride. I felt proud owning my own house. Late 20s, good job, and now my own home. I was doing well enough for myself. Like I said, I am a hard worker. Sometimes not by choice, but by necessity. The mortgage and bills needed to be paid, and I didn't have anyone else to rely on. That meant any overtime I could get my hands on, I took. Need me to come in early? No problem. Need me to work a double? Say no more. I believed if I could earn enough money to get ahead of my bills, then I could slow down the overtime and really start to enjoy the fruits of my labor. After a long week of work, I was ready to fall asleep just about anywhere. Exhausted wasn't even the word. The drive home was rough, but I finally made it. I walked in the door, threw my bag on the floor, and headed for the kitchen. I just wanted to get something in my stomach before knocking out for the night. I grabbed a beer out of the fridge and a frozen pizza from the freezer. I put the pizza in the air fryer and spotted what I would describe as the most comfortable spot known to man, my worn-down couch. It wasn't pretty, but it felt like I was sitting on a cloud. I grabbed the remote and began flipping through the channels. I didn't have anything in mind, just something for background noise as I ate. I barely made it past 5 channels before I was asleep on the couch. I would have slept there all night if it wasn't for the smell of my pizza burning in the air fryer, letting me know it was way past edible. I woke up in a daze, my eyes fighting to stay open. I forced myself to sit up. Right before I got up, I noticed something strange on the TV. I thought I was dreaming. I sat up straight, rubbed my eyes a few times, but it still didn't make any sense. I was looking at my living room. It was a bit fuzzy, sort of had a home movie type of filter on it. I couldn't process what was happening. There was a timestamp in the bottom right that read 2:07 a.m. I glanced at the cable box and noticed it was now 2:45 a.m. My attention was drawn back to the TV when the video started playing. You could see my front door just barely in frame. I saw myself entering my house, throwing my bag down, heading to the kitchen, walking out with a beer, and sitting down on the couch. I saw myself drift off to sleep within seconds, and then the video stopped. Then it began to rewind. I saw the front door close and the video paused again. Then the screen went black. "What is going on?" I said under my breath. I had to be dreaming. This had to be some sort of weird sleep deprivation thing I was experiencing. Was I hallucinating? Was someone playing a sick prank on me? It was the only thing that made sense. I didn't understand what was happening. I panicked. After frantically searching for the remote, I grabbed it and attempted to turn the TV back on. I was met with static. I was about to stand up and get out of the house, but just as I was standing, I felt it. That feeling you get when someone is watching you. When someone walks into a room and is staring a hole right into you. I froze in place as the TV displayed a new image. I recognized what I was seeing immediately. The view from the staircase in my house leading down into the living room. My phone buzzed next to me. I quickly grabbed it. I received a notification for a new voicemail. My phone never rang. This had to be it. The big reveal. One of my buddies playing some oddly elaborate trick on me. That's what I wanted to believe. I held the phone to my ear and listened to the message. "Don't move." A strange voice. A voice I didn't recognize. I began spinning the Rolodex in my mind, trying to match the voice to someone I knew. That's when I heard it. A creak at the top of the steps. The video was live. I didn't dare look up at the stairs. I didn't move a muscle. I just sat there, my heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted to escape. The TV screen remained fixed on the staircase. It was dark, grainy, but I could still make out the faint silhouette of someone or something standing motionless at the top step. It wasn't moving, neither was I. I held my breath. Another creak. It stepped down one stair, then another. Still, the figure didn't move on the screen. I finally turned my head, just slightly, toward the staircase. Empty. But the sound of footsteps continued. Slow, deliberate, not rushing, like it wanted me to hear every single step. My hand hovered over my phone. I tried to dial 911, but the screen stayed black. Dead. Even though I remembered charging it earlier that night, the TV glitched again. New angle. Now it was from behind me, from the kitchen, facing the back of my head. I could see myself motionless, staring at the screen. Behind me in the shadows of the hallway, something moved. A tall, thin figure slowly entered the frame. I turned to look behind me. Nothing. I looked back at the TV. The figure was closer now, standing right behind the couch, right behind me. I shot up and bolted for the front door. I didn't look back. I couldn't, I just ran. I didn't care that I was barefoot. I didn't care that my car keys were still on the kitchen counter. I sprinted down the street, past the other darkened houses, until I made it to the gas station at the corner. I called the police from there. They didn't find anything when they searched the house. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, no evidence of tampering with the TV. They told me maybe it was a bad dream, maybe I'd fallen asleep watching something and my mind had filled in the blanks. I wanted to believe them, but I knew better. Because the next day when I went back to gather a few things and figure out what to do next, there was a note slipped under my door. From the inside. No envelope, just a piece of paper. It said, "I told you not to move." Story 4. About 7 years ago, I got an invitation to attend my cousin's dinner party. I had never seen my cousin before and had only spoken to him on the phone. I was surprised that his family unexpectedly invited me after all these years. The invitation had an uncharted address that the GPS didn't recognize. I used a map and pinned its location. As I was driving, I began to notice how far I had ventured from civilization, trees after trees, farms after farms. "Where am I even going?" I muttered. I finally found a similar address that might be it. Approaching the house, I noticed how dull and dreary it looked. It was completely engulfed in leaves and branches. "This can't be it," I said to myself. As soon as I entered the rocky driveway, my aunt and uncle came out to greet me. They seemed excited and welcoming. Walking into the house, I asked where my cousin was. They answered immediately. "He went to run a few errands. He should be back later." We spent the next couple of hours talking about my mother and the family. My aunt made a delicious homemade pot roast that I finished in minutes. After dinner, we played a surprisingly fun and competitive game of Uno. When we finished, it was almost dark, and still no sign of my cousin. Regardless, I had to leave. It was getting late, and I knew I'd have trouble getting out of this remote place. Since my GPS was ineffective, I asked my aunt and uncle for the most efficient way to get to the highway. They gave me a puzzled look. "I thought you were staying the night." I told them I couldn't because I had work the next day and couldn't afford to miss another shift. "It's much better if you leave tomorrow morning. Trust me, you'll get lost." I shrugged it off and told them not to worry. I was a confident navigator. I could find my way out of anything. Looking slightly aggravated, they strongly advised me to stay the night, for my own safety. At this point, I was getting irritated. I sighed and said, "Fine, I'll stay the night, but I have to get up early for work." Both of them seemed strangely ecstatic that I agreed to stay. As soon as they went to go get the bedsheets and pillows, I ran out the door and jumped into my car. I hastily pulled out of the driveway. It took a while, but I eventually found my way out of that depressing place. I got home an hour later than expected. It was 11 p.m., and I didn't want to wake my parents. Climbing the fence and entering through the back door, I noticed the kitchen lights were on. As soon as I stepped inside, I saw my mom sitting at the table, looking impatient. "Where were you?" she asked. "I was at Aunt Deborah's." "You knew this. Then why did she call saying you never arrived?" To this day, I still don't know who I visited. Story 5. This is the story of the most terrifying set of circumstances I have ever lived through, and I hope nothing will ever top it. But I may not be so lucky. I hope that writing this down and sharing it might help me make some sense of what's been happening, or at the very least, help me share the burden with someone else. I've changed names and kept locations vague for privacy, but here is my story written in as much detail as I can remember. It all surrounds a trip I took to my family's ranch at the end of the summer. I had taken time off from college to work and save money for the next semester. I live in Idaho, but my family owns a decent-sized ranch in eastern Oregon. To help out and earn, I usually spend a few weeks each summer working there. I love the time out in the fields and forests, far from the noise of urban life. For this trip, I planned to spend 2 weeks there, staying with my uncle, aunt, and cousins. I was supposed to leave on a Sunday, but unexpected things delayed me until after 8 p.m., meaning I'd be driving in the dark. I wasn't worried, though. I'd done the drive many times and knew it well. It's about 4 hours and feels like leaving one world for another, from cities and suburbs to miles of wilderness, where the only lights are the stars and your headlights. I listened to the radio for the whole drive. My car doesn't have Bluetooth, and I've always loved radio anyway. I can get Idaho stations for most of the way, but once the rolling hills start, the signal breaks up. That led to the first weird moment. By now, the sun had long set. The empty landscape, dotted only with sagebrush, fences, and the occasional stream, stretched out in darkness. My headlights aren't LED, so I had only a modest glow ahead of me. The station I'd been listening to turned to static, so I pressed seek on the radio. It cycled through frequencies until it stopped. I wish I remembered the exact number. The first phrase I heard was, or satanic manifestations. That startled me. Then came a pause, followed by a radio pastor rambling about disturbances in his broadcasts. I let out a nervous laugh. Kind of funny, but still unsettling. I kept driving. By this point, I was less than an hour from the ranch. I was trying to enjoy a staticky Michael Jackson song when another station broke in. This time, the emergency alert system tone. If you've ever heard it on a lonely road at night, you know how eerie that is. The station faded again before I could hear the message. I just wanted to get to the ranch as quickly and safely as possible. The rest of the drive was uneventful, though I felt uneasy as I pulled into the gravel driveway and parked at the guest house. Fortunately, a good night's sleep helped. By the next day, I had nearly forgotten those moments, thinking they'd just make for a weird story. Still, I include them in case they tie into what came later. The first few days of ranch work were great. I spent most days walking alone through the forest fixing fences. That might sound creepy now, but at the time, it was peaceful. I'd pack lunch, drive a few miles out on the property, and enjoy the pine-covered hills. We keep several hundred head of cattle, so a lot of fencing is required to rotate the herds. Elk break wires, trees fall. It all needs maintenance. It's not exciting, but I enjoyed it. The area has had sketchy incidents before. A ranch hand once told me he found a cooler full of illicit substances in a culvert. Apparently, the area is part of a major smuggling route between Mexico and Canada. So while some things are explainable, others are not, like the mutilations. One morning, we got a call from our distant neighbor about a dead bull they found near our shared property line. We drove out to take a look. The bull's body was horrifying. Its eyes were just dark sockets, lips stripped to expose yellow teeth, tongue and reproductive organs gone. Worst of all, the cuts looked surgically precise, not like animal bites. No blood either, the neighbor said. He was right. No sign of blood, no torn grass, no disturbance. I'd seen dead animals before, but this was chilling. We couldn't figure out what had happened. The bull had been alive the day before. Losing a breeding bull is a big financial hit, not just the animal, but the lost genetic value. We sympathized, but all we could do was call the sheriff to report it. On the drive back, my uncle told me this wasn't an isolated event. If you look up Oregon cattle mutilations, you'll find stories going back decades. It's not just Oregon either. Cattle, especially bulls, are often found dead with surgical precision. Some blame aliens. I never did, but once you've spent time in remote places, you realize some things are hard to explain. Life on the ranch continued. A few nights later, my cousin Liam and I went coyote hunting. Coyotes can threaten newborn calves, and we'd had some bursts that week. We had a thermal rifle scope and a thermal monocular. Coyotes howl at dusk, not like wolves, more like a chaotic war cry. It can be unsettling, but I felt safe with a rifle nearby. Coyotes are small and tend to flee from humans. We bundled up and headed to a field near the forest edge, lying flat on a dirt road facing south. It was fully dark, the stars just beginning to shine. With thermal gear, we could see the black and white outlines of the terrain. It's not crystal clear, but you can tell a cow from a coyote. Hunting involves a lot of waiting. After about 30 minutes, I spotted a lone coyote creeping near the woods. My cousin lined up a shot, but it was too far. We waited for it to get closer. Then the coyote suddenly looked behind itself and bolted into the trees. I was annoyed. We'd been waiting in the cold for nothing. Liam told me to keep watch while he scanned the northern fields. Then I saw it. Something I'll never forget. 6 figures moving through the trees just past the fence line. No lights, no noise. Just walking in a line, carrying something. There was no reason anyone should have been out there. The owners of that land weren't even in the area. I tapped Liam. He looked through his scope and muttered, "What the? Who are they?" I whispered. "I don't know." They kept walking east. Then suddenly they stopped, completely still. A moment later, they melted into the darkness. "What should we do?" I asked. "It's not our property," Liam replied. "Maybe it's just the owners." "No way," I said. "Who walks in the forest at night without lights?" We left, keeping low, and returned to the truck. I kept checking behind us but saw nothing. We drove home, went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. Our quiet retreat now felt violated. Whoever they were, they didn't belong there. The next morning we told my uncle. He just said, "Huh," nothing more. Later that day we learned that another mutilated bull had been found. Same condition, in the same field. I immediately thought of the figures walking east the night before. We reported what we'd seen. The sheriff told us to move the cattle where they could be watched more easily. Not very helpful in our opinion. We worked through the rain to move the bulls to a pasture between the guest house and the main house. That night, I talked with Liam and my other cousin Gavin. We shared theories. Some say cults are responsible, harvesting organs for rituals. Liam mentioned a cave nearby rumored to be a cult site. He'd never seen it, but the idea stuck with me, especially after the weird radio broadcast. That night back at the guest house, I couldn't sleep. My room had a window looking out on the porch. One of the blinds had a broken slat. As I turned over, I saw an eye peeking through the gap. I yelped and fell out of bed. I grabbed the revolver on my nightstand and yelled for Gavin. "What is it?" he asked groggily. "Someone's on the porch, watching me," I cried. Before I could finish, a rock smashed through the window. Glass flew everywhere. I screamed and scrambled to the door. Gavin rushed out. We shut ourselves in his room and called my uncle. Minutes later, we saw headlights. My uncle and Liam in the truck. Both had rifles, but the intruder was gone. Then Liam shone his flashlight on the ground. Muddy footprints surrounded the house in every direction, overlapping in a messy, chaotic ring. We hadn't walked around that area all day. We didn't know if it was one person pacing or several circling the house. Either way, it was disturbing. We searched the area for an hour but found nothing. The day's hoof prints and boot tracks made it impossible to trace where the others had gone. We returned to the ranch house. Gavin and I slept in sleeping bags on the floor. The next morning I called the sheriff, gave my statement, and packed my things. I wasn't staying another night. I told my family they could come to Idaho if they ever wanted to leave, but they chose to stay. I didn't push. The daylight drive home was quiet. I kept the radio off. I slept better that night, knowing I had put distance between me and whatever had been watching. Writing all this has helped me process it. But the more I think about it, the more I realize something. I need to go back to the ranch. Something's happening out there. Something that threatens my family, their land, and the community. I need answers. And I'm not going to find peace until I know what's hiding in those woods. Story 6. To give you some context, I was about 17 at the time and visiting my brother. He lives in a 4-bedroom apartment with 3 other guy roommates, all of whom I know pretty well. These apartments weren't the nicest, but they were cheap. And that's what my brother likes. Cheap rent. As you might expect, the place attracted some questionable tenants and led to a few strange encounters. One night, after staying up late drinking, all 4 of them eventually went to bed around 2 a.m., leaving me alone on the couch. I was okay with sleeping there since it was really the only option I had. The back of the couch was right up against the wall near the entrance, and about a foot to the right of the couch was the front door of the apartment. At the time, I didn't know much about living in apartments, so I didn't lock the door after everyone else went to bed. I just lay down and fell asleep. The next day, one of my brother's roommates was the first to wake up and started looking for his large backpack, which he had left by the door. He searched the entire apartment but couldn't find it. Eventually, he figured maybe he left it in his car. When he opened the front door, there it was, sitting in the middle of the hallway with a few of his belongings scattered across the floor. He asked if one of us had played a dumb prank on him, and I immediately said I had been asleep the whole night after everyone went to bed. We all talked about it later and agreed. It wasn't a prank. Someone had crept up in the middle of the night and opened that door while I was sleeping, my head only a foot away. He must have slipped in, saw the backpack sitting right there, and either noticed me and bolted, or grabbed the bag and left quickly. Either way, we sat there that morning half laughing about it, realizing how messed up the situation was. But sometimes, even now, I get chills thinking about what that person could have done to me in an instant. Story 7. Something happened to me today that I still can't comprehend. As I type this, my hands are shaking and my heart is pounding like never before. My mind is still trying to process what happened earlier this morning, and I honestly can't tell if what I saw and felt was real. My only option right now is to share this story, hoping someone might help me understand, or at least share the burden. I'm nervous while writing this, so forgive any mistakes. First, some context. I'm a college student. That means my schedule is hectic and unpredictable, so I usually leave early and return late. For that reason, I rely on a car to get around. I still live with my parents, and the car I use is actually my mom's work vehicle. She used it for years doing delivery services, and after I started college, she let me borrow it. She now uses her own car, but on some occasions, like when her car is getting serviced, she needs the one I've been using. I don't mind at all. I consider it a privilege. On those days when I don't have the car, I usually get a ride from friends or use transportation apps like Uber or traditional taxis. This morning was no different. Last night, my mom let me know in advance that she'd be using the car today. That wasn't unusual, so I planned to use a taxi or ride service, just like always. I woke up at 5:50 a.m. My classes start at 7:40 a.m. But since I didn't have my car, I got up earlier than usual to ensure I wouldn't be late. I'd be relying on someone else to get me there. I had breakfast, got dressed, grabbed my bag, and stepped outside by 6:30. It's currently winter and my town often experiences heavy rain and dark skies, so at that time, it still looked like night. Even from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., daylight is usually dim. So there I was, standing on the sidewalk outside my house in the morning darkness. I took out my phone to decide how to get to school. I thought about calling two friends, but it was early and they were probably asleep. Then I tried the Uber app, but my mobile data was sluggish and it would have taken too long. The only thing that worked properly was my phone signal, so I decided to call a taxi. The call went smoothly. I contacted a local cab company, gave them my address, and waited. I'd done this plenty of times before. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 20. I started to worry whether anyone had actually been sent. That's when I saw it. A white car came around the corner. It looked like a regular taxi. Taxi sign on top and the company name printed near the windshield. I felt relieved. I waved at the driver, signaling that I was the one who had called. The cab slowed and pulled over next to me. I opened the back door, placed my bag behind the front passenger seat, closed it, and then got into the front passenger seat. As I sat down, I mentioned that I had placed my bag behind the seat and was about to give my destination when I saw something that made me go silent mid-sentence. The driver was a short woman, probably in her early 30s, with short hair that looked like a mix of blonde and white. Under any other circumstances, I might have thought she was pretty, but her eyes made my blood run cold. She had large, bulging, motionless eyes. They didn't blink. They didn't shift. Her head was tilted slightly upward, but her eyes were fixed on the road in a downward stare. Like when you walk downstairs without moving your head, just using your eyes to guide you. That's exactly how she was looking. It was unnatural. I've read about bulging eyes linked to thyroid conditions, but this wasn't that. Her eyes weren't sick. They were wrong. They looked more like lifeless glass than human. I froze. She didn't acknowledge me, didn't blink, didn't even glance in my direction. She just stared ahead, unmoving. The silence between us felt like it lasted forever. Every instinct in me screamed to get out of the car, but I forced myself to stay calm. Maybe she had a condition. Maybe I was overreacting. With a heavy internal effort, I finally finished my sentence and gave her the address. She didn't respond, just stared ahead. After about 10 seconds, she began driving. I'm usually talkative, but not this time. She never turned her head, never checked the mirrors, didn't glance at traffic lights or intersections. She just drove. Her body was stiff, and the only movements she made were shifting gears and pressing pedals. No signs of life otherwise. Still, she drove flawlessly. No sudden braking, no speeding, no missed signals. It felt mechanical, like an AI. But this woman wasn't a robot. She was flesh and blood. During the whole ride, I kept glancing at her. I swear she didn't blink once. 10 long minutes later, we arrived at my college. I muttered a quiet, awkward thank you and asked how much I owed. She didn't answer, still stared ahead, frozen. I took out my wallet and handed over far more than the usual fare. I placed the money in the cup holder and told her I was doing so. Then I stepped out quickly, desperate to be done with this ride. Before leaving completely, I told her I'd be grabbing my bag from the back seat. No response. I opened the back door and saw that the bag had rolled to the opposite side. I would have to lean in to grab it. I really didn't want to go back into that car, but I needed my stuff. I took a deep breath and crawled in quickly to grab the handle. That's when it hit me. A sudden wave of pure panic surged through me. My heart pounded. My vision narrowed. A cold, paralyzing fear gripped me. Every part of me screamed to run. I didn't know why, but I felt like I was in real danger. Shaking, I slowly lifted my head. She had moved. For the first time, she wasn't staring at the road. She was looking directly at me. Her eyes were wide, locked on mine. Her head was tilted down now, and she was wearing a massive, terrifying smile. Unnaturally wide, emotionless, cruel. Her stare felt like it pierced through my soul. Those eyes, so blank before, now seemed filled with dark intent. It was like being stared at by a predator. That split-second gaze felt like an eternity. Then she floored the gas pedal. The car launched forward with me still halfway inside. I still don't know how I managed to dive out in time, but somehow I escaped without serious injury. The car sped off. Even though I couldn't see her anymore, I knew she was watching me as she drove away. It took minutes for me to calm down. I threw up in some nearby bushes and barely made it to class. I couldn't focus. Every time I blinked, I saw that face, that stare. Right now, I'm in a bathroom stall, typing this on my phone, trying not to fall apart. Writing this is the only way I can cope. Just thinking about her, about that moment, makes me tremble. If anyone has a theory, any explanation at all, I'd be grateful. It doesn't have to make sense. I just need something, anything, that might help me process this. My brain still hasn't caught up. All I know is this. Next time I need to get to college without a car, I'm walking, no matter how far. Story 8. It was probably the summer of 2010. I was around 15 or 16 years old at the time. My neighbors and I snuck out on a school night to walk around and smoke some joints and cigarettes. Typical rebellious teenage stuff. The whole night we told scary stories. Not ghost stories, but real ones. We talked about a Sewell assault that had happened in our neighborhood in the 70s, kidnappers, and other dark topics, all just to scare each other. Around 1 a.m., we were walking down a long stretch of road on our way home. There were very few streetlights, and the huge oak trees made it even darker. It had started raining, and the whole atmosphere felt eerie. A little ahead of us on the left side, across the street, a hooded figure came out from the front door of a house and started walking in the same direction as us. They crossed the street, so if we continued forward, we'd walk right past them. To avoid that, we crossed the road. That's when the person crossed back and confronted us directly under a dim streetlight. To our surprise, when they removed the hood, it was a beautiful red-haired woman, probably in her late 30s or early 40s. She didn't smell like alcohol, but she was definitely not sober. She seemed aloof and stared at me in a way that felt like she was looking into my soul. Her eyes looked vacant, as if she was mentally there, but something was clouding her from truly being present. She started asking us strange questions like, "Why are you out so late? Where do you live? Do your parents know where you are?" Then unexpectedly, she tried to make an advance on me. She grabbed my shirt and tried to pull me toward her. I was already paranoid and on edge, so I stepped back and said, "Don't touch me." As all this was happening, a man in a light blue New York Yankees hat was walking down the street, smoking a cigarette. He came from the same direction we did. He looked to be in his late 20s, had a confident, purposeful stride, and an intimidating presence. He walked right past us, brushed right by us, actually. He definitely heard some of the conversation between us and the woman. After we told the woman to leave us alone and kept walking, the man turned around and approached us. He asked, "What did that woman say to you?" "What did she tell you?" We repeated her strange questions and told him she freaked us out and must have been on something. He thanked us, then chased after her. She had already started walking back the way we had come from. He caught up to her, and we watched as he dragged her back into the house she had come out of. She was fighting him the whole way. I never saw that woman or the man ever again. This happened just one street over from my house. Who were they? Why did she approach us? Why was he so interested in what she said to us? I didn't sleep a single second that night. It was deeply unsettling. At the time, I was convinced she was a distraction and the guy was going to jump us or inject us with something. We'd been talking about kidnapping kits earlier that night, so that was where my mind was. I don't know if this story is terrifying, but it was definitely strange. And even now, it still creeps me out. Story 9. This is a story from my father, something he lived through in his 20s. I'll tell it as if I were him. I was trying to find a better job so I could afford a better life. I was living in Baghdad, Iraq, and I had an uncle who owned a taxi business in Basra. For those who don't know, Basra is a large city surrounded by desert. I moved there and started working for my uncle. He showed me which routes to take and which ones to avoid. You had to be careful. Some roads could be your last. One road in particular was about 12 kilometers long, with a massive graveyard on both sides. My uncle warned me about it multiple times. After a few days on the job, one evening, I had an elderly woman ask for a ride home. Her house was past the graveyard in a small village. I initially declined, but she offered a generous fare, so I accepted and drove her there. We arrived safely. I helped her with her bags and started heading home. On my way back, I saw two figures standing near the entrance gate of the cemetery. They wore hijabs and had their faces covered. I slowed down to speak to them, but then I remembered my uncle's warning. Fear took over. I slammed the gas pedal and sped past them. In my rearview mirror, I saw two men chasing my car on foot. I eventually got home safely, though shaken. An hour later, a soldier came running toward us, screaming like he had seen death itself. We calmed him down and asked what happened. What he told us left me speechless. He said, "I was driving home from the military base to visit my family, and I found myself on that road filled with graveyards. I saw a person waving to me from the roadside. As I got closer, I saw he wore the same military uniform as me, so I stopped and picked him up. He acted normal, human. He asked for a cigarette, and I gave him one. Then he asked for a lighter. As I reached into my pocket, I glanced down and noticed that his legs weren't human. They were goat-like. I froze. I didn't know what to do. Then he asked me, 'Are you scared?' I didn't answer. He started staring straight into my soul. I was terrified. I slammed the brakes, jumped out of the car, and ran straight here. My uncle grabbed some rifles, and we went with the soldier to retrieve his belongings and check the area. We found his car, both doors wide open, and next to the passenger door, we saw footprints in the sand. Four-legged animal prints heading straight into the cemetery. Story 10. I worked in an illegal cleanup crew, and I have some stories to tell. For 1 year and 3 months, I was part of a small group of strays and desperate personalities who knew how to clean up, and more importantly, shut up. This was over a decade ago. In all that time, I've never shared these stories with anyone. Not my wife, not my friends, not even my therapist. I used to take pride in that. But now, I'm old, not in age exactly. My head doesn't have a single gray hair. But in a way, only certain experiences can age a person. I've seen too much. I can't carry it forever. And what better place to leave it than here? Nobody believes stories on this kind of site anyway. It's hard to say the time spent with that crew was pleasant. We rarely came home without looking more drained than the day before. Yet somehow those memories are warm, coated in a strange nostalgia. Sometimes thinking back feels like biting into warm bread, until I remember more clearly. Then it feels like biting into a nerve in a rotten tooth. I don't think any of us were bad people. We just needed money. The job didn't have a loyal staff. I was one of only 5 who lasted over a year. The oldest was Lonnie. He started the company years before I joined, and you could see every year etched into his face. A short, quiet man with a voice like gravel who rarely spoke above a whisper. But he loved to talk. He would spin elaborate, clearly made-up stories for fun. Lonnie could convince a newbie that Spam came from an animal native to Hawaii, now nearly extinct from overproduction. His words were always layered with sarcasm and irony. One story he swore on his mother's grave was that he met Quentin Tarantino and was the inspiration for the wolf in Pulp Fiction. Do I believe him? Absolutely not. There were other regulars. Jackson, who was on someone's bad side and needed fast cash. Sandra, who couldn't have been more than 19 when she started and saw her first body even younger, and Frank. I still see all of them in my mind. Some faces make me smile, others make my stomach turn. But like it or not, we're all tied together by what we went through. That started the day I lost my job. Before I crossed into the shady side of cleaning, I worked with a respected crime scene cleanup company. I had a good thing, until greed got the better of me. It's not a dramatic story. I was cleaning after a suis and found life savings under the mattress. More money than I'd make in 10 years of scrubbing blood. I made a choice I think many would. Where did that get me? Sitting across from my boss, with my contract between us like a thread about to snap. I don't blame him. He had no other choice. I don't remember the whole conversation, but I remember how it started. I'm fired, right? You psychic? He said all the standard stuff. Nothing I can do. We wish you the best. I already knew what was coming. Didn't stop me from begging. I think I was actually in tears when I asked for anything to avoid unemployment. He handed me a card, Moretti Appliance Repair and a number, told me that was all he could do, then ripped my contract in half. Later that day, I met Alonzo Moretti. Did you know that pieces of the Ark of the Covenant still exist in the deserts between Egypt and Israel? When Moses led his people, the Ark scraped against sand and thorns. Tiny gold flakes scattered. Even now, touching them could bring divine punishment. People dropped dead in those deserts during windstorms. Why? Because of those flakes. That was the first thing Lonnie, Alonzo Moretti, ever said to me. I had just walked into his office, which looked more like a broom closet. He lit a cigarette and stared, waiting for my response. I had only said, "Hello, sir. Nice to meet you." I awkwardly replied, "Yeah, Egypt's weird." He looked disappointed. Then he got serious. He told me my former boss spoke highly of me, but also said I had a corruptible conscience. I started to object, but Lonnie said that's exactly why he agreed to meet me. He offered the same work I'd done before, but at 5 times the pay. All I had to do was keep quiet and look the other way. I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly what he meant. He wanted me to clean up scenes before they became crime scenes. I asked why he was being so open about it. You worked for the official boys for 8 months. You know the tools, the protocols. Half the newbies think pasta soaks up blood better than sponges. You're valuable, and I can see it. You are a man of corruptible conscience. I could hand you a stack of cash right now and you'd never say a word. That I'd put on my mother's grave. I didn't argue. I started the next day. Most days started early. 7 of us in 2 vans packed in before sunrise. We'd stop at a nearby laundry shop to get cleaning supplies, always secondhand. As a supposed appliance repair company, buying large quantities of chemicals directly would have raised suspicions. The laundromat owners didn't ask questions. We paid double. As we left town and fog rolled through the hills, Lonnie gave us our briefing. Sandra was driving. She hadn't spoken a word since I met her. Jackson sat behind me, quiet but not unfriendly. Another newbie was beside me. Lonnie, as usual, was in the front. Our clients always needed to have a large appliance, fridge, oven, dishwasher, whatever, at the scene. The package would be cleaned, stuffed into the appliance, and loaded into our van. We'd drive to Lonnie's work shed on the edge of town, where he had a makeshift crematory. The ashes would be mixed with fish food and scattered in his pond. A week later, the cleaned appliance would be returned, done. In the entire time I worked with him, this system failed twice, and never because of him. Say what you want, he was brilliant, or crazy, or both. My first job was a 2-for-1, a regular client in the morning, and a rush job after. At the first sight, we met a large, cheerful man, Santa Claus minus the red. He greeted Lonnie like an old friend, told fishing jokes, seemed warm and friendly, which made what came next all the more unsettling. In his kitchen, our package sat tied to a chair, naked, beaten beyond recognition, starved, bruised, part of his skull crushed. It was clear he had been kept and tortured for a while. One eye was gone, the other bulged. He didn't look human anymore, just used. The other newbie threw up and ran outside. Lonnie chuckled. It's amazing how many people lie on their resumes. Frank, get him a beer. Frank, thin, quiet, balding, nodded and walked out. Santa loomed near us, leaned close to Jackson and whispered, I hope you're saving every penny he pays you. Would hate to ruin our camaraderie. Jackson said nothing, just cleaned. So did I. The job took 30 minutes thanks to Santa's prep. Plastic-covered walls, easy fridge access. We loaded the appliance into the van. Santa handed Lonnie a thick wad of bills. I didn't see the newbie again. Just Frank. On the way back, I switched vans. I rode alone with Frank and the fridge. The silence was suffocating. Occasionally, the fridge would thump when we hit a bump. It reminded me what was inside. Frank didn't ignore you. He just watched, like a priest staring you down in confession. Eventually, I asked, "That guy, does he do that often?" Frank smiled. "Everyone has their thing." His voice was smooth, educated, courtroom-like. "Not our job to ask why. We're hired to keep the dead quiet. Dead men tell no tales?" Bulletin. They tell plenty, to labs, to cops. Dead men speak through the living. Our job is to silence them. That means we don't talk about the clients or the dead. We dropped the fridge at the shed. The crew split. Lonnie and I drove to the next site. He said I'd eventually have to solo a job, so he wanted me to get used to it. Along the way, we chatted. He told me stories from his past. At one point, he said, "If Frank hadn't helped me through it, I'd have been in prison before you were out of diapers." Frank? I thought you started the company. I did, but Frank, he's been doing this since 97, maybe 87? Hell if I know. We arrived at a dingy motel. This one was different. A double package, and only one dishwasher. Lonnie stayed in the car. The client led me to the room. Blood soaked everything. A man and woman locked in a dead embrace, his hands around her throat, her nails dug into his. "You've got 2 hours," the client said. "Cops snoop around after that." He left. I started moving the bodies. But as I tried to lift him, he slipped, fell back onto the woman. And she grunted. I froze, stared. She was still, glassy-eyed. But after a minute, she blinked. I jumped. She slowly sat up, whispered, "He'll kill me. You have to help." I looked at the man. She read my face. "He would have killed me. I had no choice, please." I hesitated, then nodded. Cleanup took longer. No prep. Blood-soaked carpet. I had to cut and replace part of the floor. Finally loaded the dishwasher with the one body. Client handed me extra cash. "Impressive. I'll call again." "Oh, and that dishwasher actually doesn't work. Do you repair appliances?" "For an extra fee." He laughed and gave me more. Lonnie didn't talk much on the drive. Fine by me. I was hiding a breathing woman in the back of our van. I drove 20 over the limit to get to the shed. I told Lonnie I'd handle it. Brought the dishwasher inside. The smell, burned hair, stomach acid, charred meat, never leaves you. I opened the appliance. She climbed out, shaken. "Sorry you had to be in there with, It was better than when he was breathing." She told me her story. I won't share it. It's hers, not mine. But she had nowhere to go. I gave her the full payment. Told her to wait before leaving. "See you around," I said. "No offense," she replied, "but given your job, I hope that's not true." Lonnie was at the pond, scattering ashes. "You finish up?" he asked. "Yeah." "What did you do about the girl?" I froze. He laughed. "Walls are thin. Heard you talking. What did you do?" "Gave her money. Told her to start over." He nodded. "Right thing. Not what I would have done, but the right thing." We stood in silence. He scratched his head. He said, "When I started, I saw the person in every body. I felt bad scrubbing brains off the floor. Over time, that changed. Mangled ones became long days. Fresh ones with bowel voids became nuisances. Eventually, I started seeing loudmouths on the street as future packages. We're all just meat. I keep thinking one day the fear of who I've become will scare me straight. Make me quit. But it doesn't matter if I'm here or working retail or teaching kids. I'll still be in the meat business." He dumped the last of the bucket. "This just pays more." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you're a good kid. I don't want you to end up like me. Go home. Think about it before you come back." Then he turned, walked to the van, and left me under the starlight by the pond. Story 11. I'm a 19-year-old first-year student and moved into the dorms after working hard to earn enough money to get into college. I wish I could say everything was fine at first and like most people, but it was sketchy from day one. The moment I met my roommate, the room smelled absolutely awful. He was microwaving something that made the whole place reek. Whatever it was, it stank so badly it lingered for days. Since the college doesn't allow housing refunds after you've paid up front, unless you find someone to take your spot, I was stuck with this guy for the whole semester. Besides the nasty smell, he mostly kept to himself. But when he did speak, he talked in this very formal, robotic way. It was unsettling. One time we got into a conversation that spiraled into debates on politics, religion. Don't ask me how we got there. I really wish we never had that talk because he started saying things that were either completely nonsensical or deeply disturbing. He claimed he believed God was a figment of people's imagination and that everyone on earth was actually God. He said he thought every country should operate like North Korea. He believed dating and relationships were useless. At first, I assumed he was just another edgy atheist who had a hard life and used dark views to cope. That assumption changed when he told me he ran an organization. At first, it sounded like some sort of amateur detective group doing work similar to the FBI, and it didn't seem too strange, until a few weeks later, when I realized what that organization really was. In February, he got called into the admin office by FBI agents. He was being investigated for allegedly making threats online. The first time was already alarming, but when it happened again, I couldn't ignore it. Apparently, the FBI was conducting a serious investigation on both him and his so-called organization. That's when I decided to look into it myself. I called up a friend who also goes to our college, and we walked around campus talking about the situation. That's when we noticed a flyer on one of the bulletin boards. It showed a group of people wearing creepy masks, white cloaks, and a four-sided symbol with an eye in the middle, almost like a hybrid between an occult and extremist symbol. The flyer said, "Join us," with a link at the bottom. I won't share that link, for your safety and mine. Then it hit me. The symbol on the flyer matched the flag hanging on the corner of our room, the same one I thought was just decoration, and the same creepy mask hanging on the wall. I had thought it was cultural or artistic at first. I had no idea I was sharing a room with someone potentially involved in something cult-like. That wasn't the only problem. The guy was rude, dismissive, and flat-out inconsiderate. He stayed up every night clicking away loudly on his keyboard, keeping me up until 3 a.m. I asked him nicely, every week, to turn down the brightness and keep the noise down. But he'd always make it my fault, saying I had a messed up sleep schedule. He never apologized and didn't care. Eventually, I had enough. I went to the resident assistants and told them I couldn't spend another night in that room. I had photographic evidence of the cult materials, proof of the late-night noise, and I even mentioned that he had claimed to own a machete. That got their attention. They stepped in, and I was finally able to move out and away from him. Story 12. I was upstairs in my room one night playing video games with the volume really loud when I thought I heard noises coming from downstairs. I muted the TV and listened closer. Nothing. I resumed playing the game for another hour when I heard it again, only louder. I was sure I heard it this time and was a little freaked out. To assure myself, I went downstairs to the basement, where I thought I heard the noise coming from. As soon as I opened the basement door, I was hit with a cold breeze. I went downstairs and saw the window wide open. I was 100% sure I had closed and locked all the windows in the house. I was ready to make a run for it when something stopped me. I turned around and for the first time noticed the closet door was slightly cracked open. I stood for what seemed like 30 minutes in front of that door, debating whether I should open it. I moved closer and put my hand on the doorknob. All of a sudden, I heard a creepy crackle coming from inside the closet. I have never run faster up a flight of stairs before. I locked the door and called the cops, who had an unusually fast response time. They came in and searched the house, and not even 5 minutes into their search, I heard a gunshot from downstairs. A few minutes later, they came out with a deranged-looking man, probably homeless. They put him in the back of the car and told me they had opened the door, and the man who was holding a gun shot at them and missed. He luckily missed, and the cops disarmed him and arrested him. The scariest part was how close I was to opening that door and likely being murdered. Story 13. My girlfriend talks in her sleep. At first, it was cute and hilarious to tell her what she said. It was harmless nonsense like, "The sky is folding," or "We need to raise the ground." We talked the next day about whether she remembered her dream, but she never did. I wish I knew what she meant by, "We need to raise the ground." Some context, our nightly routine is for us to start out cuddling and then give up once it gets too hot. Then we're usually both on our sides back to back. She would fall asleep before I did, and so I would hear the full range of her nightly musings. Honestly, at first I was eager to hear what she said. It was always funny to tell her and our friends what she would say while deep in the throes of REM. But now I'm done. I'd prefer she not talk anymore. How am I supposed to sleep after what happened last night? Last night around 11 p.m., she was asleep and I was still up reading. Back to back, I heard her mumble something under her breath. I couldn't quite make out what she said, but I leaned over from my book to peek at her face, and she was sleeping soundly. I returned to my book, got absorbed back into its pages. At some point, I fell asleep. Next thing I know, I'm woken up by my girlfriend talking at full volume. I opened my eyes, and at some point in the night, both of us had turned to lay face to face. My girlfriend's eyes are wide open. She is staring right at me, mere inches from my face, but her eyes are vacuous, like she is looking through me. These eyes, man, it's like she was straining to widen them as much as possible. Those are the eyes I fell in love with, and right now they are scaring the absolute life out of me. My heart rate skyrockets, and chock full of adrenaline, I throw off the covers and jump out of bed. Looking at her, her eyes follow me like a painting, but her body stays still. For 1 second, I decided that my book light was keeping her awake, and what she had said was, "Can you please turn that off?" Now out of bed and looking at her, she's not right. Her body hasn't moved, but her eyes dart from looking at me to looking around the room. I dare to ask her, "Are you all right?" No response. Those eyes look at me when I speak, though. They are now deadlocked, looking right into my eyes. Her breathing hasn't changed. That is a sleep breathing for sure. That's when, while looking right at me, she says in a too-deep voice, "Come back to bed, dearie." My girlfriend has never called me dearie before. We have pet names, sure, but they range from pumpkin, baby, to cupcake. Dearie sounds like something my grandmother would call me. I decide I'll get more information before I climb back into bed with a potentially possessed girlfriend. "Are you awake, sweetie?" No response. The eyes dart from me to the wall, to the door, and then to the ceiling. I'm about to nope out of the room when her wide-open eyes roll to the back of her head. The white of those eyes stands out in the dim glow of the book light. "No pupils in sight," she insists. "Of course I'm awake. Come back to bed?" With a subtle tap of the fingers on the comforter. Looking at her fingers now, I'm starting to come around. She's never sleepwalked before. Surely she is awake now if she is moving her hands. But looking at her fingers, it's as though she is pretending to have control. They are all going in different directions, one finger pointing straight down and the others to the side. Those hands are not my girlfriend's hands. They are simulating normal movement as best they can, though. I say, "I'm going to get a drink of water, baby. Be right back. Can I get you anything?" Fully planning to run out of the house the moment I'm over the threshold. But my normally agreeable and sweet girlfriend decides I'm not allowed to leave. "As serious as anything I've ever heard," she says in that too-deep horror voice. "Take one step out of that door, and I will rip out your throat and, well, I'll leave the rest implied." Shocked, but understanding the importance of not letting this thing know I am in trouble, I reply, "As interesting a proposition as that is, I think I'm going to," and thinking quickly, I grab my water bottle from the nightstand. This doesn't please my girlfriend, as she decides to start screaming and clawing her way toward me. It is a supernatural scream, so high-pitched and bird-like that I feel like the neighbors 3 houses down are going to ask if they heard something strange last night. As fast as I can manage, I unscrew the lid and douse her in water. Like I knew what I was doing. Her eyes close, her twisted fingers relax, and she is back asleep. I'm going to sleep on the couch for a while, maybe forever. She'll understand when she's awake.